You're listening to the Sound Words STL podcast.
Hi, I'm John Fleming for SoundwordsSTL.com. On August 29, 1994, Oasis's debut album Definitely Maybe was released, eventually selling more than 8 million copies worldwide. The record featured 2 top 10 UK singles, including the enduring hit Live Forever, which was the band's first top 40 hit on US Hot 100 airplay chart. Definitely Maybe would signify a revival for British rock in the 90s. Contemporaries like Blur and The Verve would also see tremendous success in the decade, but it was the first Oasis album that kicked down the door of an alternative rock landscape otherwise dominated by grunge in the mainstream. And in 2006, a readers' poll conducted by the British media outlet NME voted it the greatest album of all time. The band would call it quits in 2009, but hopes of a reunion remained a decade later. Definitely Maybe is the only full album to feature Oasis's original lineup: lead singer Liam Gallagher, lead guitarist Noel Gallagher, rhythm guitarist Paul Bonehead Arthurs, bassist Paul Gwigsy McGuigan, and finally, holding it down on the drums was Tony McCarroll, who joins me now by phone. It's great to have you on the podcast, Tony. Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you, Johnny. Okay, mate?
I'm doing well. I'm definitely excited to talk with you about the anniversary of Definitely Maybe and about Oasis. In April, it was reported by the Associated Press that you were interested in participating in a Oasis reunion if one were to come about. What do you think it would take for that to happen? Is that something that you're anticipating, or something that's just kind of you would do it if it came up?
Do you know, earlier on in the year, I must say I thought that, thought it was something that might happen, whether I was involved or not. But, as time rolls on, I'm starting to realise that the brothers seem to be getting further and further apart. So I don't know if you follow the Twitter accounts and stuff like that, but it's getting quite nasty, and I'm starting to buy into it, almost really believe it. So, I was hoping it'd happen. I was hoping I might be part of it if it did happen. And I thought this year, again, being 25 years, would be the most significant year for it to happen. But, of course, that didn't go ahead. And I don't think it will. Not now.
Yeah, certainly anybody that's followed what Liam and Noel Gallagher have said to each other in the press can take note of a lot of sniping, for lack of a better word, at each other. Do you still...
I thought it was kind of tongue-in-cheek on Liam's behalf, initially. But now, Noel's really gone in with a serious low dig a couple of weeks back. So I'm like, I'm not reading. I don't think it'll happen. I really don't. So I'm starting to believe more like that. So, but again, even if it did happen, being part of the lineup or not is something that I would love. I'd be there. I'd be attending. So, enjoying it with everybody else.
So I mean, beyond your own contributions, just sort of as like a fan of the band, as somebody that...
Yeah, I'd love to see it happen. I mean, I did see them in 2009, and that was the first time that I'd ever, if you like, been outside of the band. In my day, all of us used to say, Craig, you would love to be out in that audience and feel what's going on. So it happened, there was an outdoor festival, V-Festival, 2009, the year that they broke up. And it was actually, if I'm not mistaken, it was the last gig, which is quite quite weird, really, because, how many members of Oasis were at the first gig and the last gig? I think there's only 3 of us, but I was in the audience, so it's quite a weird one. So.
Must have felt like quite the out-of-body experience to sort of see it from the other end.
It's quite scary. I must admit, I don't know if you've been to an Oasis concert, but especially over the UK, they're absolutely, it's like being at a rowdy football match. It's really upbeat and feels dangerous almost. So, how old am I now? That was when I was around 40, I think. It was kind of scary, and I was like, right, I've got to get back to the back here. I can't handle this. It was too much. Absolute nuts Oasis crowd going mad for the band.
Did you enjoy the show just from a fan experience?
Yeah, of course I was listening in with intently, but of course, without a doubt, it was good to see them up there.
Yeah. And do you still personally maintain contact with any of the members of Oasis?
I wouldn't say not personal contact, but when if ever we happen to meet, it's always quite pleasant.
Okay.
I've not seen Noel or Gwigs, the bass player, since the day I left. but I've come across Liam and Bonehead here and there, and that's been quite pleasant. The last time Liam was when they released the Supersonic movie, so I was at the premiere of that. I was invited back to the hotel and spent time with Liam for the first time in 20 years, best part of 20 years, I think it was.
Yeah, and so
all very good.
So whenever you imagine an Oasis reunion in your head, are you imagining more just, hang out and play the hits, or would you want to record new material?
Oh, crikey, that's a good question. I think they'd only be interested in touring, but I'd love to have a go, yeah. I'd love to hear them record new stuff and go back to the beginning, if you like. I find that when they get too experimental, Oasis for me, it doesn't work. They lose something that the band is about. That wall of sound and back to basics, if you like. So I think they should stay in that ballpark. But
yeah, and so before the band formed, you were friends growing up in Manchester, particularly with Bonehead and Guigsy. When did the three of you begin to bond over music in particular, rather than just sports or just being friends?
Well, Griggs was the first. I met Griggs at early teens. Now Griggs was well educated with music and had lots of obscure albums and obscure bands, if you like. So somewhat the music bonding started with Griggs 12, 13-ish, if you like. I wasn't aware of Bonehead till I joined the Rain. But I mean, what was I, 18, 19 years of age then? But we all had that bonding, yes, of music, but we also looked at it and wanted to be successful, to get out of the mundane lives we were in at the time, really, because there was nothing going on in Manchester for, if you like, the uneducated. So that was the way out. So that was our aim, to get in a band and be successful. And eventually it did happen.
Yeah, and you said it was your way of getting out. Now, whenever you formed The Rain, which for anybody who's listening who's not familiar, was the band that preceded Oasis, were you just trying to find a way to get gigs and hang out with your friends, or were you sort of seeking out the kind of fame that Oasis ended up reaching?
I wouldn't call it fame, just success. Even if we got out of our lives, normal lives at that point, to record one album, a single, it was success. It would have felt we were going in the right direction, if you like. So that might have ticked the box, but we certainly, we were certainly hungry for that. Could I have predicted the level of Oasis and the success? Not as big as it become. I've got to say that. So I thought the band might well have imploded by then, but they kept at it and strong for years, I suppose. Yeah.
Now, whenever you were recording Definitely Maybe, did you just sense during the recording process that this was the sort of album that people were going to be talking about 25 years later, or was it just, this is a good album, hopefully people like it?
Well, certain tracks, most definitely. You Live Forever, Slide Away, them sort of tunes, they would have, but, as the album as a whole, I mean, how do I describe that album? It's very an eclectic kind of mix, so, I mean, everything was thrown into the pot there. 25 years later, I couldn't know. I wouldn't. Being in the band again, it's hard to sort of see that. Do you know what I mean? We're doing our job, if you like, and we're looking at an itinerary where we're going next. It's not, so. But yeah, talking about it 25 years and later, and the things I've been doing this year, the level of sort of love for Oasis and its members, it's blew me away, to be honest. Absolutely blew me away.
Okay, and you mentioned Live Forever and Slide Away as two of the notable songs that you had a good feeling about whenever you were starting out recording the album. Would you say those were your favorite songs on Definitely Maybe?
Definitely, yes. And yeah, throw in Supersonic maybe, yeah. But I mean, I loved performing the more upbeat tracks when we were live. For example, You Bring It On Downs. I mean, we added head shrink of that sort of a vibe. I love that sort of drumming. The show sort of really exploded from them points, if you like.
Yeah, those are also songs that are particularly heavy on drums, so I can understand why those would be favorites of yours.
Totally enjoyed them. Enjoyed them tracks, so without a doubt.
Yeah, now the first single off the album was Supersonic, which you'd mentioned. It reached the top 40 in the UK. It was a fairly big hit on American radio as well. There's an often told story about the composition of that song that suggests that Noel Gallagher just wrote the song very quickly, sort of by himself. But in your 2010 autobiography, The Truth, you told a version of the story that was, I wouldn't say completely the opposite of Noel's, but fairly different from it in somewhat significant ways, about it being more of a group composition. What would you like to...
what I remember of that night, we were at the Real People studio, and the Real People were recording us. Alan McGee had sent us down to do, funnily enough, the Bring It On Down, but it wasn't sounding right, and whatever was going wrong. What I remember that night, I was doing like a sound check on the bass drum, snare drum, hi-hat, and Noel literally kicked the doors open and said, keep that going, and it came that quick. Within minutes it was there. That's what I do remember. So I want to take a bit of credit on that one.
It's really...
Noel, his better hits, we'll call it, they did come within minutes. He'll Live Forever, I believe, another one, wrote within a few minutes at home. So, he's got it going on, well said, without a doubt.
Yeah, it's weird to think that a song like Supersonic, which being the first single was the entry point for so many people into the band, myself included, to think that it was just like that. Like, it wasn't like it was some arduous process over months or years. It just sort of...
I know.
Almost by accident.
It's a kind of a strange thing how it came together really fast, but I think that was Oasis as well. We all kind of knew, if you like, what to do, when to do it, how to do it. And I think that was like years of the band being together before that. Years, year or two. There wasn't much in it, but we knew we were a great five-piece, I'd say.
Yeah. And probably the most acclaimed song off of Definitely Maybe is Live Forever, and it was a huge hit at the time. It still is a hit today. It took on this extra layer of significance, particularly after the bombing at Manchester Arena in 2017. What's it like to have a song that, not only is popular years later, but people view it as like this very important song that touched them in such a profound way?
It's a love song, isn't it, essentially, I suppose, but the way it's recorded, the intro, you know exactly where you're at. It's one of them songs, it's a very weird intro, for one. In a certain way. Beautifully written though. He did a massive, brilliant, great job on it. Again, talking about it so many years later, it's weird. It's very weird to be doing this.
Yeah, and so after Oasis, you had formed a band called Reka, and that gave you a chance to be in another band with brothers. This time it was with your brothers rather than with the Gallaghers. What was it like being sort of on the other end of that dynamic? Because there's been so much said and written about the friction between the Gallaghers. You mentioned it yourself, but did you find that was sort of an inherent part of the experience of being in a brother band?
Well, I wasn't particularly. It was my other two brothers. Now I wasn't particularly involved in the writing end of things, we'll say. So there was one brother. I would refer to him somewhat as the Noel Gallagher as the band, but. The MD wanted things very precise in the way he wrote it, and them sort of arguments. If my other brother made a little mistake, crikey, the room would explode. But is that wanting perfection and making sure it's right before we carry on with it? So I'm trying to mould my younger brother into the scene, if you like, but. There was definitely lots of friction with brothers, but that happens with many, many bands, and there's quite a few off the top of my head I can think of. So, Kinks, Happy Mondays, there's a few of them out there that with brothers in the band and doesn't always go well. But saying that, it's the closest suit you. It's quite easy to take your stresses out, if you like. Yeah, and get away with it. There's certain things you could say to your brother or your siblings and forget about it 5 minutes later. So good stress relief, maybe. Yeah.
So one other note to cycle back to, definitely maybe, it's interesting that there were songs that were written so quickly for the album, considering that there was also probably a dozen B-sides that you had that came out and were also acclaimed in their own right. Did you have any, whenever it came to actually selecting the songs for the album, were there any of those B-sides that became hits with the fans that you thought should have been on the album instead, or are you happy with the overall track
I've
listing?
got to say I'm happy with exactly how they released everything. There's obviously some kind of strategy behind it, but we wouldn't. Again, that'd be back to Noel. I don't think any of the band members were consulted about, order of release or order of tracks, things like that. That was always down to Noel, I suppose, and management.
Yeah, it's kind of hard, I guess, to argue against the success that the album had.
Yeah, we just get on with your job. Do your own, whatever you do.
Yeah, I mean, who knows, if you switch one song out, maybe that makes all the difference in terms of perception of it.
Yeah. I mean, definitely maybe goals. I think, the curve, if you like, of the album, it's perfect. Everything's right. Even for the eclectic mix of songs on there, it's just brilliant running album, brilliant running order of an album.
Yeah, and as far as your actual contribution to the sound of the album, I would say that probably the thing that would differentiate you most, particularly from other later drummers in Oasis, is that you have a very, I guess, aggressive would be a good way to put it, style. It's very influenced.
I'd say, but I think that was born out of being in the rehearsal room. We were in a rehearsal room which was, what should we say, 5 meters by 5 meters or something like that. And everybody, all the guitars was turned up to 10. And of course, there's no mics on the drums, being rehearsals and being the position we were in at the time. But I felt I was competing sometimes in the rehearsal room, and that just rolled over into the live act, if you like.
So the sound was kind of as influenced by you, but also you were influenced by the sound, I guess, just sort of the physical limitations.
I think, we were all, if you like, trying to be turned up to 10. I credit Bonehead with a lot of the sound. I think there was a sound in The Rain, the band that preceded Oasis there. I describe it as the wall of sound. I think that was very evident in them days even. We were quite aggressive, loud, big sounding. But nobody ever seems to credit Dear Bonehead that much. But I think a lot of the sound is down to him and the way he played.
Yeah, and as far as your sound in particular, who would you say are some of the drummers that influenced your style?
Oh man, wow, there's so many. Ringo, without a doubt, is one of us. Very simple. Let's say I want to go simple, but as I was always taught as a drummer, simple is best. It's what it's what you leave out. You play for the song. But of course, I love living there, listening to Keith Moon, John Bonham, them sort of drummers. But somebody somewhere along the line likened me to the heavy hitting John Bonham, if you like. But I've never ever put myself in his class. But very loud, banging in your face. So
it's hard to argue against somebody comparing you to John Bonham. That's worse things to be called.
Wow, yeah, and that was from Steve Cravett from Ocean Colour Scene, if you're aware of them, that end.
Yeah.
But and I was like, wow, I couldn't take that. I couldn't take it. I was, no. John Bonham's something else, like, and had his own thing going on. But the way, especially that he whacked the drums and maybe heavy drumsticks and stuff like that, that was something that I did. I was influenced by, I'd say.
Yeah. So, again, I referenced it earlier, but you had a autobiography that came out in 2010 called "The Truth." Do you have any other anything planned? I know you mentioned that there isn't a Oasis reunion on the horizon, but anything else to commemorate the anniversary coming up? Or
Are you aware of what I'm doing this year? I sort of referred to it there before. I don't know if you've been maybe following anything I've been doing this end, but I was asked early in the year to go out and do like a Q&A tour, questions and answers tour.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so, I mean, how many days? Probably about 20 in all this year. I'm hopefully looking at more dates, but basically I'm going out meeting the fans. There's maybe 200 people that are turning up at each gig, just listening to the old stories, then to the Q&A, and after that we have bottom line is it's a complete dedication to Oasis on the 25th. That's the angle we're going in at. But yeah, I was invited along to do the Q&A, and I'm out there doing lots of signings and meet and greets, pitches, that sort of thing. But I really am enjoying meeting the fans, and like I said, it's again back to being 25 years later, how important it is to people. It's astounding, to be honest.
Yeah, and speaking as one of those sort of obsessives that's still enjoying it all these years later, definitely excited to hear that the band's willing to embrace nostalgia for it as well. And Tony McCarroll, thank you for joining me on the SoundwordsSTL.com podcast. Once again, my name is John Fleming, speaking to Tony McCarroll of Oasis. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Thank you very much.
Thanks for listening to the SoundWords STL podcast.